everyone, my name's Dudley, and we're so glad that you're here with us today. Here are a few things coming up around the church that you may want to know about. This Friday, we hope you're making plans to join us at 7 o'clock for a very special night of worship. It's going to be a great time of celebration, and it won't be the same without you there. 7 o'clock this Friday. Hope you're here. For all the men in the house, we have a great opportunity for you coming up next Monday, September 10th. Relevant is a gathering designed just for you and is a great way to engage in some great community. You can register under the events tab of our website. Our Phase 1 groups for moms and dads are for expecting parents and parents of children up to 5 years old. Join us for community, laughter, and support as we all navigate the first phase of our parenting journey. Find more information on the PC3 Wilmington events page or email parents@portcitychurch.org. For more information on these or any other events, you can visit our website or the volunteers in the gallery today after the service. We're so glad you're here today, and we hope you enjoy our service.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Port City Community Church. I hope you are having an amazing weekend. Is that the case? Yeah, it's a holiday weekend, so happy Labor Day to all of you. Hope you're going to take some time to enjoy just a chance to like your last summer hurrah, and enjoy all the things. Even though it's September the 2nd, which means in my head, a couple of things, that we have made a turn toward fall, even though the weather feels like dead of summer still, right? But it also means, and this was such a blessing yesterday, that college football is back on every Saturday. And that's amazing, right? There's some haters for college football. That's okay. We love you anyway. I'm a big fan. But we are super excited about the chance just to spend a little bit of time with you on each and every Sunday morning. If this is your first time here or your first time back in a while, as Dudley said in the video, if you need any more information or are not sure how to get information about something you're interested in, our website's a great place. The app that we have is a great place, or the gallery is actually the best place out near the cafe. We have staff and volunteers down there every Sunday to help you out. We're looking forward to today. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're beginning a brand new series today. It's called Rushed. And it's all about how to live within a pace that allows God's work to really come alive in you and not shortchange that in light of your pace. So it's going to be a great series, 5 weeks. Stick with us the whole time. It's going to be amazing. But today, before we get to the message, we're going to spend some time as a church, as just a family, singing together. And we do this every single week. Some of you love it. Others of you, you watch it happen and you tolerate it. But this is what we want to know, is that we sing together because it's a great way for our voices and our mouths to remind our souls and our spirits some things that are true about our Heavenly Father, that He loves us and that we are amazingly loved by Him. And it also is a chance for us to respond to Him and who He is. And so today we're going to be singing as Courtney and Kaylee and the band lead us. We're going to be singing a few songs as they lead us an amazing way. But one of the lines in this song that we're going to sing in just a few minutes says, who am I that the highest king, like the highest king of the universe, would welcome me? And maybe that's where our heart is this morning. We're just kind of in a place going, I'm feeling like a nobody. I'm feeling kind of defeated. I'm feeling kind of in a place that I don't feel very welcomed, not here in this place, but I don't feel welcomed by God Himself. But who are we? Well, we're going to sing about who God has said that we are. We are His chosen, and we are loved by Him. We were lost, but we are now gathered in this place together. So it's going to be a great time to sing together. I hope you guys make that part of our day. Now, before we do that, there's an event coming up next week that was in the video a minute ago that I want to tell you more about. But to do that, I want you guys to welcome out to the stage my good friend Dennis Huffam. You guys give Dennis a big old round of applause. The most interesting man in the world, Dennis Huffam. Dennis gets to lead our men's ministry here, and so when you hear about Relevant, which we do a lot, that's your event. Dennis, tell us all about what's going on with Relevant and what excites you these days about what's going on with these men's events on Monday nights.
Oh, Chris, the thing that I'm most excited about with Relevant is, we have it every other month, but whenever I stand up on stage on those Monday nights and I look out and I see about 150 men that have gathered to knowing that they're taking the next step with Christ is something that is really exciting. It's not meaning that we're perfect or any of that kind of stuff, but it's just that these guys have gathered and saying that, you know what, I may be brand new in my walk. I may not know what a relationship with Christ looks like, but I'm willing to take that next step. And that's the coolest thing. But another cool thing is that you're speaking.
What?
Yeah, you're speaking.
Well, that's not quite as cool as what you said the first
Yeah.
thing you said.
It's good stuff.
That's going to be fun next week as I speak. Now, what's some of the things you're hearing from some of the men who come to these events? Like, what's it doing in their lives, in their walks, in their families?
Yeah, the thing that's happening at Relevant is people that don't know, if you've never been before, please come, men. Men. What happens is we don't have chairs set out like this. What we have are round tables. And when we first designed Relevant, we started talking about what this event is we're like, there's no way that men would sit around a round table and actually have discussions. But what we have found is that is the thing that the men desire the most, is that we now have, after the message, we have about 45 minutes of table discussion where men that may not know each other, that may not have a relationship, they're willing to sit and talk about what's going on in their lives or what Christ is doing in their life. People are sharing, they're being vulnerable. We talk about now around the church about creating environments, again, always that is a connection around the person of Jesus, and Relevant is just that, for men to come together, to be able to know that the guy beside you, Mike says it all the time from stage, is that everybody's crazy. Men are crazy, but the term I use is that I want men to look at the guy sitting beside him and realize that they're just as jacked up as he is. And there's an opportunity. I mean, that's the thing, is that we're all the same way as men, that we have to rely on God. And I think that's the thing, is that in Relevant, it's beginning to provide an opportunity for men to take next steps in their relationship with Christ through biblical counseling. We've had guys after Relevant to say, you know what, I'm having struggles with my marriage. Then they get into marriage counseling. We get men get plugged into small groups, or just different ways to get into community. And that's what we want, is just engagement.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us, anybody wants to be a part of that? It's next week, not tomorrow, but next Monday. Tell us when and where.
Monday night, 7 o'clock, down in Studio 3. You can go online and register on our website. Go to the events page, go to Relevant, click. It is free. But please, if you're a man, you've never been there before, please show up. It's a great night. If you've been before, please come and encourage those guys that may be beginning in their walks with Christ. So come together.
Awesome. Now, Kaylee and Courtney have much better voices than you and I, so we're going to let them lead us.
Yes.
Before we do, though, why don't you guys stand up, say hello to about 4 or 5 people around you. Tell them you're so glad to see them, and let's sing together.
Good morning. Yeah, our team is really excited to worship with you guys. I was talking to Courtney this morning and just talking about the beauty of worship, and how when we come expectant to what God is going to do, it actually shifts our perspective on what He's doing, and we see that He is working and that His kindness is revealing towards us. And I believe that in the next couple of moments as we worship, I really believe that God is going to show you that He is working, that He is in our midst, that He is for us. I believe that He's going to show you that, hey, my love has called your name. You can find your identity in me. To maybe even encourage you that if you're in a season of waiting, that it's actually a season of training. That if you're in a season of, I'm feeling a lot of heaviness and it feels like it's gonna be forever, but His promise is that it's not gonna be forever, because I have a plan that is full of hope and joy for you. So as we sing, church, I pray and I encourage that we would just declare that truth, that we can celebrate that together. Because we're really excited to just come before the Father and hear what He has to say to us this morning. We sing, who am I that the highest King would welcome us? Who am I that the highest King would welcome me? I was lost, but He brought me in. Oh, His love for me. Oh, His love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Come on, declare. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Yes. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Yes, that's true this morning. Come on. There's no wall coming after me. Yeah. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up. All for your church, God. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Yeah, yeah. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Yeah. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me, Jesus. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love. And oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of Can we celebrate His love towards us this morning? Come on. You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies, till all my fears are gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear, but I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear, but I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Oh, your love has called my name. I've been born again into your family. And God, I just thank you for this time just to come before you. I thank you for revealing your kindness towards us, and that we can respond with just such joy and just gladness that you are for us and you are with us right here in this moment. I love the promise that we sing that we are yours. We don't have to be a slave to sin. We don't have to be a slave to fear. I believe that fear, it paralyzes us, but faith can mobilize us to trust you even more. So I pray that's what we declare as here and as we walk out, that God, that your faith will move us to know you and to trust you in everything that we do, because we are yours. And in Jesus' name we all say, amen.
Hey, you guys can have a seat. One of the things that's obviously we are blessed with some very talented people who can lead us in music. Music's been an important part of the church throughout its history. God instructs us to do things like sing them a new song. He marks moments with declarations of songs, and songs are always an important part of the way our relationships are marked. In fact, if you grew up when I did, or maybe you're still here, whenever you, especially in high school, middle school, whenever you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, you usually try to get a song that describes that relationship, right? You try to pick a song. This is our song. And if you grew up when I did, that song was probably You're the Inspiration by Chicago. And what you did, though, there was reason, because what you were saying is you were declaring there was something about that relationship that it needed an anthem. It needed something that declared that. And the other thing it did is that when y'all broke up, you completely ruined that song for her forever, because every time she heard it, she thought of you. So that was a good thing, too. But it's always been this. And what we're going to do this Friday night is we're going to gather. And the Bible teaches us that when the church gathers, it gathers to be unified. It gathers to come together as the body of Christ, all the parts to declare some things in unity. And singing is one of them. The ordinance of the Lord's Supper is another one. We gather specifically to unify ourselves through our voices to make declarations. And on this Friday night at 7 o'clock, we're going to be gathering in this room specifically for that purpose, to bring our voices together, to be led, to pursue and to worship Him. It's declaring this relationship is worthy of an anthem, to let our hearts be moved and not just getting along with the things that need to get done, but really stop and pause and create some space for that to happen. We'll also be sharing communion together, which is where we get to symbolically embrace the gospel with freshness, to enter in, to remember what it is He's done for us, and to do that as one body under the banner of His name and His work in our world. And so we invite you to be a part of that. We're talking about God's faithfulness. We're really excited to be together. So I invite you to Friday night at 7 o'clock in this room. At this time, I'm going to invite our host team to come down. We'll be receiving our offering. For those of you who are regular contributors, givers, tithers to Port City Community Church, we are very grateful. To those of you who don't, I would encourage you to consider becoming a part of our church in that way. And I know some of you ask, why are the baskets empty when you pass them? Because a lot of us give online, and that as well. And some of you use this as a time, you give in this time as a part of your act of worship, and that's fine as well. We make that available through that. So we're going to be passing the baskets and receiving our offering at this time. And I'll be back out in just a minute to start a new series called Rushed. See you in a minute. All right, that makes you tired, doesn't it? Sunday night, everybody's already starting to think about tomorrow. You can sort of feel it creeping up, all the stuff you've got to do. And so we're going to start this new series called Rushed. And rushed isn't something that you feel. It's not being hurried. Rushed, we're going to define it for our terms, is what's behind that, what causes us to feel like that all the time, so that when Sunday turns into Monday, the rats start to come out and the worry begins and all the things that you've got to do tomorrow start to pile up. And we're going to start to make some headway to work on not how to stop it, but how to use it, how to leverage it, how to live within it in a way that God intends for us to live. One of my premises in this series is that in your relationship with God, your beliefs may not be the biggest threat to your faith. In your relationship with God and your walk with God, what you believe may not be the biggest threat to your faith. In fact, I was thinking about this, trying to, because I don't want to underestimate what the importance of beliefs, because they're extremely important, right? We understand that. But I think there are a lot of folks who have sort of a nod at believing the right things, you're trying to do the right things, you're saying yes to the right things, or you're at least affirming the right things, but it never seems to make its way into your life. It never seems to get there. There never seems to be a foundation. Your beliefs are sort of a set of ideals that never get applied and play out in your real world, everyday life. And so what we're going to do over the next few weeks together is we're going to explore this idea in the series called Rush. And at the end of the series on September 30th, we're going to give you a gift. Only on the 30th, though. So if you come on the 30th, I'll give you something. If you come after that, it's going to cost you $10 to get one. So that'll be the way that works. But I was thinking about this, and I want to set this up because I want us to talk about the things that we do believe. We look at our culture and we think, oh my gosh, we are so divided and people believe so many different things. And there's just no, we are so, just yelling at each other about all the different points that we disagree with each other on. And it's just chronic and constant yelling at each other. And I began to just sit down and make a list. What are the things that human beings tend to believe they matter? What are the things that we would say yes to kind of collectively? And so I can't say this is true for every person in the world, but I can sort of at least suspect that it's true for everyone who's here tonight or everyone who is listening or will listen to this. But I think that humans, you and I, believe that giving of ourselves to some greater good is important, is a good thing. I think that we would all say, you know what, if we give our lives to something that is bigger than ourselves, that would be a good thing. We would all say that's something that we should aspire to. Most people don't go, no, I want to be selfish and self-absorbed and small and build my own. We know that giving ourselves to bigger things is a good thing. I think most of us would believe that producing things in a healthy way, a sustainable way that brings good to other people would also be important. We would say it's a good way. When we do things, we should be mindful of the way it affects other people, other cultures, of the way it affects the environment, of the way it affects the way we do things and build things in this world. We ought to pay attention to that. We would all say that's a good thing. We'd all go, okay, yes, that's a good thing. And we would all believe that creating things that are beautiful and expressive and authentic so that other people can enjoy them, we would all go, that's a good thing as well. I don't know anybody who says, no, those are all terrible things. Most of us as human beings would say, yes, those are good things. Then my question is, what's the problem? What's the problem? Why is it that we can't do this if it's so obvious what we all think is good and important and right, at least on the surface? Now, recognize there's some complexities and nuance that go below it. But I use that to give you my assumption. If you've not been around Port City very long, or if you have been, you know that I do this. Every series, I tend to give you an assumption or a list of assumptions so that you know where I'm coming from, so that when you know where I'm coming from, you can decide if you agree or disagree, and then at least we'll be able to have a conversation about it. So I only have one assumption for this series called Rush, and the assumption is this, that we believe that important things are important. Most human beings believe that important things are important. Does that make sense? We all believe that important things are important. We all have this list of things we believe are important, and more than likely, it's very similar. It's very similar. Most people that I know would believe that your relationship to God is very important. Now, I'm sure there are people who don't fall in that category. Maybe you're here and you're going, I don't know what I believe about God or if I believe in God. But if you happen to believe, or if you supposed or presupposed that God was good and He cared, He was concerned about you, you would probably say, if there was a God that was good and concerned about me and cared for me, my relationship with Him would be something that it would be very important for me to understand. Most all of us would believe and ascribe to the fact that our relationship with our family is very important. We would all say, when you hear people say at the end of their lives, nobody says they wish they'd have worked more, they all talk about relationships. And we all believe that relationships with other people, our friends, the people we work with, the way we get along with the other people is very important. We would all agree that those things are important. So what is the problem? Well, the problem is that we don't often arrange our lives around the things that are important. We don't often arrange our lives around the things that are important. And the topic we're going to explore in this is the idea of priorities. And the reason that most of us don't arrange our lives around the things that are important is because of this really simple, very good thing called opportunity. I love opportunities. I am an idea guy. I'm always thinking, I'm always looking. I love opportunities. I love, we could do this, and we could do that, and we could do this. And that's a lot of fun when you're just in your head and you're playing around. It's not very fun for people who you're trying to lead in an organization that you're leading because they're going, Mike, you can't keep chasing every shiny object that happens to catch your attention. I'm like, listen, I can do attention deficit with the best of them. And so my point is just because I've been learning this. This is one of the most profound lessons I've been learning over the last 4 years. And it's been a hard lesson, not only personally, but professionally, and sort of what I do, what we're doing together. And I want to let you in on this because it does have a profound effects on how you lead your life, and most importantly, the pace in which you will end up living at. The tension, and this is what happens because opportunities are basically things that we get to do. The reason we don't arrange our lives around what is important is because we tend to arrange our lives around opportunities that we see as imperative. Opportunities that simply cannot be passed up. So a few years ago, we were going through some exercises with our leadership team, with our board of directors, and one of my friends who's on our board, he said, Mike, you are really, really, really good at being opportunistic, but you are not very good at being strategic. I thought, well, who put you in charge, right? You're really good at being opportunistic, but you're not really good at being strategic. Being strategic versus opportunistic. And I began to think, because it wasn't like a light bulb, right, that I had to think about it. I understood it at some level, but I couldn't really get my hands around thinking, what does this mean? What does it mean to be opportunistic versus strategic? What happens to us? Well, it's real simple. Opportunistic is simply taking advantage of what is in front of you. To be opportunistic is to take advantage of what is in front of you. Whatever you see in front of you that might benefit you, that might serve you, that might do something good for you or for other people, you just take advantage of it. And so you sort of take after these things. And strategic is a little bit different. Strategic is opportunistic in the direction of purpose. There's something that drives the opportunities. Let me see if I can give you an example as to how this affects this thing at which we live, the speed at which we live, the pace of life. When we are seeking to raise the next generation, whether you're a parent or not, you've seen this at play. Parents sort of, when your kids are born, you inherently are given this pressure because you're now responsible to make sure these human beings are productive and successful and fulfill all the things they're supposed to fulfill. And so we instinctively think that the best way to do that is to give them every opportunity they can to succeed. And so what happens is we use every opportunity to make them succeed as a chance to enroll them in every single activity they can possibly fit into their schedule to give them every possible opportunity that they might need to succeed. So they wind up doing baseball and basketball and football and dance and jazz and this and that and the other and track and blah, 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 blah. Not to mention their SATs, their ACTs, and all the other things that come along with it. And so what happens is you are running from thing to thing to thing to make sure they have every opportunity that's available in front of them to see, to test, to figure out what they're going to do. And my question is, when you do that, do you find yourself more intentional, more focused, more free, more full? Or do you find yourself more frantic and chaotic and strapped and stressed and worried and all the other things that go along with it? And you immediately begin to see how this pace or how this picture affects our pace, because we don't have any way to say, what is our purpose? What is happening? When we think about God's will, we've talked about this, we think about God's will like this. And it's like this X on a treasure map, that it's somewhere that exists, and if we can just get there, then. And we look at this, and what the treasure map seems to look like is this. Up, no, right? And this is how our lives tend to go. This is how we tend to think of things. We keep thinking, if I can just get there. And when I say something like opportunistic is seizing or taking advantage of the opportunities that are in front of you, a lot of us see that. It's an opportunity to take a job, to take a promotion, to do this financially, to do this relationally, to get our kids in this. There's all these opportunities that are in front of us. And we tend to think like this, well, if God opens a door, I should go through it, whether or not He's actually instructed us to or not. And we don't have anything that stops. It's just if it's an open door, we should go. So we become opportunistic without any real understanding or thought for our own purpose. For our own purpose. What does your purpose look like? What does it look like to have a purpose? All right, I want to ask you a question or two questions, and then we're going to kind of jump into our kind of teaching and then give you some homework and we'll be done. But there are two questions I want you to ask, or at least sort of hypothetically consider. And most people just give a quick yes to them, but I want you to think about this a little bit different. Maybe use this week to do that. But question number one is this, do you believe, do you suppose that if God created you, if He intended you, that He has a purpose for your life? That He has a purpose for your skills, for your talents, for your strengths, for your weaknesses, for your sphere of influence, for the relationships that you have? Do you think that He has a purpose in those? And we can also go, oh yeah, I suppose so. And that would be the right answer, right? If God created us, He didn't just sit there and go, hey, figure this out. He had some idea, some intention behind it. I think everything we see about Him, He's very intentional. And so my second question is this, if God has a purpose for you, do you suppose that He has a plan to fulfill that purpose? Because it would be really cruel to give you a purpose and not have a plan to make it happen, wouldn't it? That'd be cruel. So if God has a purpose, then He has a plan, and this is largely the problem. So we're trying to understand our purpose. It may start when you're in your 20s. It may start earlier than that. You start thinking, what do I want to do with my life? How do I get here? Where's this place? And the problem is this place is always elusive. Because what happens is, as soon as you start off, you start thinking and calculating, oh, when I get there, then I can. And most people think they will be more effective when they get to this place, and they lose the opportunities to be effective all along the way because they've never understood how to be strategic, how to walk, how to pay attention. And so this whole idea that we're talking about, I remember when I was in college, I remember wrestling with this. And I didn't have words to purpose. I didn't understand it, but I knew that I was walking with God. I was doing quiet times. I'd been in church. I'm listening. God, what do you want me to do? I want to do what you want me to do. I think a lot of us have prayed that prayer. I want to do what you want me to do. And there was this sort of gnawing in my gut about what He wanted me to do. People ask me all the time, Mike, when were you called to preach? And I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm still waiting on that because it wasn't a burning bush for me. It wasn't like that. It was this thing, this wrestling. God, I think that you want me to go in the ministry. That was the only language I had for it. What that meant was that God seemed to be leading me to go work in a church full time. That was the only picture I had. That was as much purpose and vision as I had. I didn't know anything else about it. So I kind of wrote this down and I began to kind of wrestle with this. And then what happens is at the time I was 19 years old. I was studying architecture in school. And I began to think, okay, ministry is the target. I need to get full-time employment at a church. I need to get right there. Now I'm looking at this going, what is the shortest distance between these 2 points? It's obviously a straight line. Who has time for all this mumbo jumbo? And so I began to say, why would I major in architecture? It's going to take me 5 years when I can major in something less intense and get out in like 2.5 or 3. Why? Because the faster I can get here, the more effective I will be, right? That makes sense. If I can just get to where God wants me to be, and I begin to calculate, okay, God, hey, I'm going to switch my major from architecture. I'm going to major in something that's not as intense, doesn't take as long, and then then God, this is going to work out great for both of us. Isn't that what you want me to do? Why? Because I start calculating, how can I get there faster? How many of you ever thought that God's leading you in a relationship, you want to get married or you want to do this, and you start going, how can I get there faster? What's the shortest distance between this point? And then as soon as we start thinking like that, everything sort of gets in a hurry, it gets rushed, and it increases the pace. It's interesting when you read the Bible. When you read the Bible, one of the fundamental things that you see, there's a pace in which you and I have been designed to live. There are two ways to think about pace. Number one is the pace in which we have been designed to live. The other, I'm going to set this on the table. We're not going to use this anymore right now. The other is a pace in which you feel pressured to live at. Which one describes your life? The pace in which you have been designed, created to live, or the pace that is determined by all the pressure and angst that you feel about all the things that you've got to do or could do or opportunities that are in front of you. And the problem, or what happens to us, is we don't understand this. So like, it's interesting, if you look at just the human body, our hearts, our breath, everything is paced, everything is up and everything is down. There's rhythms to it. In all of creation, it's this way, whether it's the planets and the rotations and the revolutions and the seasons and the days, and all these things speak of rhythm and movement and pace. And when God created the earth, he did it in 7 days. And on the seventh day, right, he said he created the earth in 7 days. And on the seventh day, he rested. He created rest. Not because he was bored or because he was tired. He created rest because it is a pause. It is something important for you and I to begin to understand. It's interesting, human beings were created on the sixth day. Can you imagine this? You're created, you got Adam and Eve, and you're waking up, oh, God, here we are. What are we going to do? He says, oh, you're going to rest. First day of work, and you're taking a break. That's what you did. When you begin to see this, you begin to see these patterns in the way that the Hebrew culture, and the way it was, the Hebrew culture that God intended to design, dealing with the Sabbath and its implications. And there's a whole study on this we could talk about. But the Hebrew day began at sundown the night before. That's how the calendar worked. It began the night before. Monday would be beginning in just a little bit here, about an hour or so. And the reason is because it sort of set the rhythms that we rest first in order to rise, in order to work or to cooperate. We rest first in order to prepare for the work that is for us the next day. Now, not anymore. We work until we can't stand up anymore. We come home, we crash, and then we get up and we do it again. That's our rhythm. And it's because we feel all this pressure. There's a way in which we have been designed to live, and that's what I want for us to look at and begin to understand. How is it that we get to this place? When it comes to understanding your purpose, I want to just take one more moment and talk about this because we don't have a lot of time to go into it. But what you have to do is you have to begin to nuance some things, because when you're young, when you're in college, in high school, it's words like this: I'm called, or I want to, or whatever language you would use to teach or to lead or to build or to go to ministry or to do business or to do education or to do government. There's usually some kind of generic description, and you can only see a portion of it from where you are. And then we start calculating and trying to figure out how we can get there faster. What I would encourage you to do is to start to walk with God in a way that allows you to see some things and to really participate. He will show you He is faithful to do this. What happened to me over this last summer, this whole summer has been about me preparing my life for the next season of Port City Church. It's so funny, we were talking about this. I'm 47 years old, and we were sitting down. We've been doing some exercises that culminated in what's called a life plan. I spent 2 days with a friend of mine. You basically sit in a room, and they grill you for 2 days to try to understand, what is God calling me to do in this next season of my life, to prepare for this new thing that He's doing in and through our church. That's really what the emphasis for this next season, for my personal call. And so I sat there, I thought, I'm 47, in 10 years, what is this going to look like? And in 10 years, what I realized is in 10 years, I'm going to be almost 60. There is no way I'm a young guy, right? In 10 years, I'm going to be almost 60. That's going to be, some of you just like, man, I got one foot in the grave already, right? It's going to be like that. It's going to be like that. And then you forecast out another 15 years at 25 years, and people will say, Mike, can you ever imagine, Port City Church when you're not the pastor? I'm like, yes, all the time. Because it's going to happen in 25 or 30 years. And part of this isn't just for the next generation to belong to the church, but it's the next generation to actually own and take this to where God wants to be. We got to start thinking about that now. So that's needless to say, a little too far in the future. But I'm sitting here, I'm looking at my own life, and I looked over the course of my life of all the things I wanted when I was 20. And all the things that I thought I was going to give up. God, if I can just get here faster, then I can get all the things that I want to have my cake and eat it too. But God took me on this journey. It wasn't 40 years like the Israelites in the desert, but it was long. And it was slower than I wanted. And there were issues and circumstances that I faced I would have rather have not. They were all an important part of what God was doing. And the call has become more and more nuanced. What started as a call to ministry, and they go, what does that mean? What does it mean to be in the youth ministry? What does it mean to start a church? What does it mean to be a pastor? What do these things mean? It's easy to say those things. What do they mean? What does it mean to be a business? What does to be in business? What does it mean to be a teacher? What does it mean to be in real estate? What does it mean to be in law? What does it mean to be in politics? Those are all easy, quick answers, but what does it mean? What is the purpose behind it? What is God doing? And y'all, you don't discover or see these things in a hurry, and you don't see them instantly. It's not like you get a light bulb at 25 and then live the rest of your life executing the plan. That's not how this is designed to work. There are two ways that happens in terms of pace. When we live based on the pace that is defined by the pressure, it is driven by the assumption that if we can achieve things faster, more stuff will get done. There is a pace in which we have been designed to live. You wanna know what it is? I'm gonna tell you next week. Here's what we got to do. I want to look at what happened with Jesus. This is really important for us. There's a story, one of the miracles that Jesus performed is found in all four Gospels, and we're going to be looking in John chapter 6 today, and really specifically two verses. But basically what happens is Jesus has been teaching, and there are tons of people who are following him and listening to him. And he decides, the teaching's over, you guys can go home. He leaves the disciples, he goes up on a mountain, and all these people follow him. And the Bible records, it says there are 5,000 people, roughly 5,000 people gathered, listening or looking for Jesus. And it's getting late in the day, and none of them have eaten, and a lot of times people would travel and come, and that was the problem, so they didn't have any food. And so Jesus asked a question to his disciples. He says, hey, where do we get some food for all these people? Now this is like 5,000 people they're gonna feed. And one of the disciples goes, Jesus, it would take us about $75,000 to feed all these people today. And they're looking, we don't have that today. And so I don't know what we're going to do. And then there's Peter. Peter comes up and says, hey, Jesus, I found this guy with a lunchbox. There's some fish, there's some fish. And there's some bread in there. I think you can do something with this. And Jesus says, that will be perfect. I want you to have all the people in the crowd to sit down. You've probably heard this. Even if you don't read the Bible a lot, you've probably heard this story, this miracle. And Jesus takes the fish and the bread, and he holds it up and he blesses it. And then he has his disciples distribute it, and they feed the entire congregation, so much that there's 12 baskets left over. And this is pretty cool, right? I mean, if you want to put it in modern day terms, right? Think about this. This would be like us having one Chick-fil-A sandwich on a Sunday. And Jesus going, hey, I'm going to take this one Chick-fil-A sandwich, and we're all getting Chick-fil-A sandwiches on a Sunday. We'd be like, dude, that is cool. You'll be talking about that tomorrow. You said, we got Chick-fil-A on a Saturday because Jesus turned one sandwich into 1,000. How cool is that? That's what it had been like. It was such a practical, tangible miracle that people would have thought, this is so cool. Jesus did this from time to time. He turned water into wine, and he made the party better than it was or than it was going to be. He did things like this. I'm like, why didn't he do more cool miracles like that? Why didn't he do more? Because here's what happened. Think about if you're to the disciples. You know that Jesus is coming as the king. He's talked about his kingdom. Here he comes. And now he's given Chick-fil-A to 5,000 people. They're going, Jesus, this is your chance. Right? You want to be somebody? You can build a platform. You can get so many Instagram followers. You can do this now. You've got to strike while the iron is hot. I mean, think about it. That's the opportunity that is right in front of him. He has just fed 5,000 people. They are stoked out of their mind. The momentum is in their favor. Let's seize it while we can. That's what happens. The opportunistic person says, we've got to get this right now or it's never. It's the opportunity of a lifetime and we're never going to get it again. And we live like that from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, always chasing, always wanting, always overwhelmed, always stressed out. And here's what I love, because it's exactly what the people said. And when the story gets to the bottom in chapter 6, verse 14, it says this: when the people saw the sign that Jesus had performed, they said, this dude is awesome. That's what they said. They said, this is indeed the prophet who has come into the world. Let's make this happen now. In verse 15, Jesus says this: perceiving that they were about to come and take him by force and make him king, he withdrew again to a mountain by himself. Now, when I'm looking at this in my Bible, I immediately go to Jesus withdrew again to the mountain by himself, and I underline that, oh, that's something we can do. And I want to make two less obvious observations, but observations that I believe are more important that lead us to withdrawing. The first observation is that Jesus perceives something. What this means is when I first became aware of this, I'm sitting down here, and I'm sitting here, and I'm looking. God, what do you want me to do? And as soon as I see it, I go, aha, and I begin to figure out what that straight line is. It's like an aha moment. As soon as you think that you figured out what God wants you to do, we usually start calculating how we can get there faster. I've done this my whole life, and God has mercifully kept me from this. My journey has not been linear. It's not been a straight line. It's been very jagged, very strange, but very rich. In fact, I sat here at 47 years old looking at my life and looking at the first 25 years of ministry, and the one thing that I realized was that God has been faithful to me. You know what happens when you think about in 10 years from now, I'll almost be 60, I start going, oh my gosh, what about my retirement? And you know what I had to come to grips with? In the next 25 years, I'll probably stand there and realize that God has been faithful to me. Do you know how much courage and encouragement that gives to me? So I say that because that's available to you. That's what he wants to do in your life as we begin to look at this and define this and understand this. He says that perceiving something, that there is a thing that is happening that you don't see from your vantage point. There's something that you have to consider when you think about his purpose. You've got to stay focused on what it is that he's doing and not how you're going to make happen what he wants done. That what God wants to do with you is not the most important thing about his will. It's what he wants you to become that is more important than anything. And this doesn't happen because you get there faster. It happens because you walk with him wherever he leads you. Jesus said perceiving, right? He took a different course. He saw something that everybody else didn't see. His disciples saw an opportunity to strike, to make it happen. Jesus saw something else. My question is, what is it that you see? The second lesser obvious observation is the idea of force. It says that they were going to take him by force and make him king. Now, what does that mean? Do you think that these people are going to kidnap Jesus, tie him up, stick him on a throne and put a crown on his head? Is that what we think it means? What does it mean? I mean, Jesus' call was to be king. He was going to be the King of Kings. What it means is this, and we all feel this. It was this groundswell of momentum that was going to push him into a place to take what God had promised him on his own terms. It was a way for him to be king in his own way with his own will. And my question to you, have you ever felt forced into that the opportunity is right in front of you and now's the time to strike and you just get swept up? That's what rushed is. Rushed is the pressure that you feel. Rush is the force that makes you feel hurried, like you've got to get there faster. Because if you can get there faster, then you'll be more effective. You can get there faster, then this will happen. And it's this pressure we feel that makes us feel hurried and ultimately feel pressured and ultimately leaves us overwhelmed. That's what rushed is. There's a force that is acting and you felt this. I got to get out of college. I got to get a job. I got to get this. I got to get my kids here. I got to get this there. I got to get there, this. And it's just on and chronic in our lives. And Jesus recognized There was something different going on. Do you recognize that there's something different going on? And the second thing is he recognized there was a force that was pushing him in ways that were different than perhaps what God wanted for him. And I can tell you that's happened in my life so many times. So many times. I've bargained with God, and you've heard me tell stories about that. I'm going to give you your homework, and then we're going to be done, because what Jesus did, and here's what happened. Whenever we feel forced, we begin to exert force. Whenever we feel pressure, we just tend to pressure everybody else around us, and that's sort of how we end up living. We don't have any way, any mechanism to think about this differently. I remember when we first started Port City Church almost 20 years ago. We did not have much money. And because I was 29 and had a family, it was sort of important that I earned a living, that I provided for my family. And I was very nervous about it, as you can imagine. I'm sure none of y'all ever thought that or struggled with that, but I did. I was like, how am I going to do this? So we're working at this church. We're trying to get it going. We've got about 85 to 100 college students coming, a few adults with jobs, but that's about it. And so I'm working part-time at Cape Fear College, teaching architecture classes, doing a substitute thing, and we got all this stuff going on, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to make this work. I'm like, God, you know, right? You know that I need this. You've promised to provide. Come on. So I began to calculate, how can I make this happen? Well, I was a youth pastor. I had some connection to the youth ministry. I said, you know what I'll do? I'll put out my name, and I'll go speak at some youth camps. They'll pay me to come. And then what I realized is it was kind of cool, because you kind of get swept up. You get a little headshot. You get your name on a flyer. It says, Mike Ashcraft, guest speaker. Like, man, I'm pretty cool, right? And and all of a sudden you feel this rush, this force that begins to push you in places that you didn't think you were able to be pushed. So I had a couple of options to go do that. They were going to pay me pretty well. I'm thinking, okay, this is how I can get there. God, surely this is what you want me to do. This is the quickest distance between these 2 points, a straight line. Put my name out, book a couple of camps, book a couple of discipleship weekends, go speak at youth, and I'll just do sort of Port City. So January, I had my first gig, and I go down to, it was in Atlanta. I go to Atlanta. I can't remember if I flew or drove. I can't remember. But I go down to Atlanta to preach for a friend of mine, his youth camp. And I'm all excited because, you know, you get to travel and you're a youth speaker. You're like the guy. You get to stand up on stage and talk to me like, this is all cool. So I go in there, and we get there. The schedule's all messed up. It's Friday. The first session's going to be Friday. It's supposed to be at 9 o'clock. Something happens with an event, so they have to move the event. It's earlier. So they move the session to like 11:30. So kids have been in school all day Friday. They come, they've been at camp, they've been at a game, they've been on sugar and pizza and everything else. And they're going to come into a service at 11:30, and I'm going to start preaching at 12 midnight. You can imagine how good this is going to be. And so then what happens is I get up there and I start my message, my talk, and it is literally like I've never done it before. Like nothing I'm saying even, and I know like I have issues like speaking and stuff, right? I slur my words, I don't complete sentences, I get that. But I'm not terrible at it. And nothing is working. They're just looking at me. They're throwing paper at each other. I'm like, this is a disaster. It's like a 10-minute talk, and I'm done. Like, this is terrible. And even afterwards, the guy said, hey, Mike, thanks for coming. Not like, great job, just thanks, for glad you're here. It's like, oh, perfect. And it was, and I couldn't figure out. I left that weekend, and it was a total disaster. It was almost like something stopped me from doing it. And so I'm restless. I'm like, God, what are you doing? This is what happened again. It's not this, there's no voice. I'm just wrestling this out. And what I felt like I was doing, what I heard God say to me, and I'm using that phrase so you'll understand, what I felt was that I'm trying to force his provision. And he said, Mike, I don't need you to do that. I need you to trust me. And what I wrote down was, all the speaking, it feels good, and you get sort of swept into that. And I wrote down in my journal that I'm not going to do any outside speaking or outside things unless it is a direct correlation to what God has called me to do at Port City Church. And that was, so I called the other guys, and I just said, hey, look, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be able to do that. I just don't have, my schedule's not allow it, blah, blah. And I just canceled the other 3 or 4, whatever I had that summer and fall, and just said, I'm not going to do anymore. I'll just trust whatever happens. And we ran it around. And by the end of that year, a friend of mine called me. It wasn't a friend at the time. I met him later, but he called me and says, hey, Mike, we're doing this church leader conference. I've been coming to your church for about a few months. I love what's happening there. I wanted to see if you'll come and speak to these church leaders about what God is doing in your church. He used those exact words. I remember thinking, God, I think you've given me license and liberty to do that. It was only because of all this other process that I don't have to force things. And you know this, and you can tell when you feel this. Jesus said, right, he said, perceiving that they were forcing him to be king. And for some of you, you got to see, you know what, you feel like, I'm being forced to take this opportunity. I'm being forced to do this. I feel this pressure to do this. I'm not sure. It seems to be the shortest distance between the 2 points, but I'm not sure. What do? It says that Jesus withdrew. He withdrew. He made time for him to see. Perceiving that this wasn't the right thing, he pulled away to get better perspective. And that's what I'm going to ask and invite you to do. Withdrawal does two things, and we give you two homework assignments. And this is the cheesy way to say this, that you and I, have to create space in order to set pace. Cheesy enough? Create space to set pace. What most of us do is we get to tonight and we start worrying about tomorrow because of all the things that we are expected to do. And that builds pressure. And I'm wondering if there's another way. What if we were able to create space in our lives so that we could establish the pace at which we are going to live, intended to live, with all the responsibilities and all the things that we have on us? And I'm assuming that you're busy and you got stuff going on like I do. But the two things I would encourage you to do is this. Thing number one, when you withdraw, and I would take 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes if you can swing it, I would take time and I would define what is important. I would get a whiteboard. I would get a sticky note. Heck, I would take a wall in my house and a Sharpie marker and I would write down on it what is important. Your wife might kill you, but you can paint over it later. I would write down what is important. Because I will tell you why. If you don't write down what is important, if you don't have a real clear picture of what is important, your life will never be arranged for it. I remember when I was younger, my kids were small, and my wife and I have been married a few years. We had small kids. You know the chaos that brings. I wrote this down. I've been doing this practice most of my married life. I have a list of things that I love about Julie. That's my wife. A list of things that I love about her. Things that are important to me about her. I remember when my youngest was probably, my oldest was probably 5 or 6. My youngest was like 1. One of the things that I wrote down that's really important to me about my wife is I love the way she is with my girls. And that's how I wrote it. I know they're our girls, but I wrote it. I love the way she is with my girls. I love the way that she is with my girls. Here's why this matters. Because when you come home from work after working all day and you're tired and exhausted and things haven't gone well, you have this picture in your head of what it's going to look like to walk into your home. The house is going to be clean. Dinner's going to be made, right? The remote control's in the right spot. The house is clean. You get all this. You have this picture. And you walk in, and the kids have been making crafts with all of your stuff, and dinner's not ready. It's not even a thought yet, and there's stuff going everywhere. And you're like, what is going on? Like, what is going on? I wanted this to be about me. And I walk in, and my wife says, hey, can you watch the kids for a minute? I'm going to go lay in the backyard and just look just for a second. I'm like, no, I want to do this. And it happens that fast. Do you know what happens when I walk in the room and I realize that the way she is with my girls is really important to me? When I walk into my house like that, I get to do something about what's important. I get to help her, to make her, to steward the things that are important to me about her. Now, this is available to us in hundreds of decisions all day long, but most of us don't realize it because we don't really know what's important. Write it down. Put it on your wall. So that's thing number one. Can you do that? And thing number two, this will be a lot of fun. Thing number two is I want you to just track your time this week. Just get a sheet of paper or a calendar and just track where you spend your time. Like 4 hours binging Netflix. That is terrible to write down, but it happens. I've been watching a lot of Netflix this summer, man. I don't have to go to therapy to get off of Netflix. I mean, it happens. In the morning, do you even know how much time you sit there when you wake up and you scroll through Facebook and your Instagram feed just kind of looking to see what happened the night before? Is it 20 minutes? Is it 30 minutes? Have you ever just tracked your time? Now, you don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to make it, just do it, just to see what's there. Here's what I think will happen. When you do that, you will realize that the potential for you to actually do something about where you are is really, really available to you, because there's a lot of time that we don't use very well. There are a lot of things that we just sort of get sucked into because of the force. And we need some space to perceive that there might be something else going on. There might be something more important, more available to us right here, right now. So I want you to define what is important. I want for you to track your time. And over the next few weeks, we're going to figure out a way to find the pace of life that you have been designed to live. Wouldn't that be good? Right? All right, let's pray. God, I ask you to help us. I thank you that you have created us with tremendous intention. You have created us with purpose, and that you actually have a way in which our purpose can come to fruition. We don't have to force it. We don't have to demand or push. We can follow you. Father, I ask that this week, with all the pressure we feel, with all the things that are going on, that we would withdraw. We would withdraw from what we are prone to see something a little differently. You help us to see our time and our rhythms. You would help us to see what's important and how we arrange our lives, either around them or in neglect of them. God, I ask that you would help us in this, to teach us the pace of life at which you intend for us to live. God, not that we would become monastic or complacent, but rather we would live fully and freely. And that's my hope and my prayer for the sake of what you want to do in us and for the sake of what you want to do through us. And I pray this in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.